Welcome back. Now, our fireballs for the Fire Blast ability are using onHit, aren't they? Now, if we go to Actor and open Fireball, the Aura Fireball, we don't have anything here for onHit. We're just using the inherited onHit function. And if we go to Aura Projectile, we can see what that function does. OnHit right here. It results in playing a sound, spawning a Niagara system, and stopping the looping sound and setting a Boolean. Now, this is great, but this is sort of the vanilla way to do it. This is just using gameplay statics and Niagara function library to play sounds and spawn particles. What if we want to take advantage of gameplay cues? Well, gameplay cues are replicated by default. As we know, they're RPCs. And even though we've upped our project's RPC limit per net update to 10, well, we still know that our Fire Blast ability is spawning 12 of these. So 12 is verging on a bit much for all at once, which is why we've erred on the side of not using gameplay cues, or at least using them sparingly, and we're not using them here. But what if you wanted to anyway? What if you wanted to use a gameplay cue locally without sending an RPC? Well, we could do that too. So I'd like to show how to do that with onHit. And in fact, ability system components should all have a set of functions that make it easy to handle gameplay cues locally. So we'll visit that. But for now, let's talk about how we can execute a local gameplay cue in Aura Fireball. Well, we're already calling onHit. We're calling it on the server, and then in destroyed, we're calling it if bhit is false, right? So really, we could take Aura Fireball and override onHit if we make it virtual. So that's the way I'd like to do this, because if we do that, we won't have to change anything else. We just have to execute a gameplay cue, which means we'll have to make one, but we'll get to that. For now, I'm going to make onHit in Aura Projectile a virtual function. And then we can override this virtual function in Aura Fireball. So I'm going to go to aurafireball.h in the protected section, as this is a protected function, and I'm going to override onHit. And now Aura Fireball can implement its own definition for this. And whatever we do, by the end of it, I'm going to set bhit to true, just like we did in Aura Projectile right here. The only difference is the way we're going to handle these things, right? Now, we want to stop the looping sound component, yes. So I'm going to copy that part and put that in the Aura Fireball version. And of course, looping sound component is private. So if we're going to use looping sound component in a child class, that has to be protected as well. No problem. We can take looping sound component. We can cut it from the private section and paste it into the protected section. And now Aura Fireball should be able to access it, provided that it includes the correct header file. Well, we can steal that from Aura Projectile.cpp, its audio component. So we can paste that up here, and we should be good to go. All right, so onHit is overridden, and we're stopping the looping sound, but how do we execute a gameplay cue? Well, first of all, we need to know what the gameplay cue tag is, because gameplay cues are executed by tag. So for this particular gameplay cue that we're going to create for Fire Blast, we can make a gameplay cue tag by going to Aura Gameplay Tags. I'm going to do that. We have most of our gameplay cue tags made inside the engine. In fact, all of them are made that way. But this one we want to use in C++, so I'm going to make a native gameplay tag. And I'm going to call this gameplay cue underscore Fire Blast. And we'll go ahead and define Fire Blast in Aura Gameplay Tags. I'm just going to copy one of these and go all the way down to the bottom, make a comment that says gameplay cues, and paste this, and we'll use gameplay cue Fire Blast, and it's going to be gameplay cue dot Fire Blast. And we'll say Fire Blast gameplay cue tag. Now that we have that, we can close Aura Gameplay Tags. We're done with it. And here in onHit, we'd like to execute a gameplay cue locally. So how are we going to execute a local gameplay queue? Well, if we search for gameplay queue manager and we go to gameplay queue manager.h, we can scroll down and see that there are a number of functions that are very useful. Here are 3 static functions right here. We can add, remove, or execute gameplay queues locally, non-replicated. Now remember, adding is for adding a instance gameplay queue, something that you add to an actor, whereas executing is just executing something that's either static, a gameplay queue notify burst, etc. Now I'd like to make a burst notify, so I'm going to use execute gameplay queue non-replicated, which requires a target, a gameplay queue tag, and some parameters. Now our fireball needs to know the target, and that target has to have an ability system component. Either it's the avatar actor or the owner actor, and so on. Now our fireball could have an owner if we set it. We could get the ability system component from damage effect params, but we're not really setting that on clients. We're setting that on the server when we spawn this thing. Now, how do we set something that the clients will know about? Well, the owner of all actors is replicated. So if we go back to our gameplay ability where we're spawning these fireballs, we can set the owner there or make sure that we're doing so. Let's go to Aura Fire Blast and go to where we're spawning these fireballs. We're setting the damage effect params. We're even setting the return to actor. We could also set the owner as well. We can take fireball and call set owner. And we can simply use the avatar actor from the actor info if we want that to be the owner. And if we have this set, the owner on all actors is replicated. So the fireball is going to know on the client who its owner is. However, we need to make sure that's a valid pointer just in case onHit gets called before that replication happens, which is unlikely but possible. So we're going to check if getOwner, if that's a valid pointer, and then we can call that static function on gameplay queue manager, execute gameplay queue non-replicated. So we're going to get gameplay queue manager. Make sure that we have the header file included for that. So there it is, gameplay queue manager. And we can call execute gameplay queue non-replicated, passing in the actor. We're going to use getOwner. The gameplay tag, we can use Aura gameplay tags. Gameplay queue fireblast. Now, the third parameter is gameplay queue parameters. We've seen gameplay queue parameters in the editor in Blueprint. This is just an F gameplay queue parameter struct. So we can make one. We can make an F gameplay queue parameters called queue params. And I mentioned that I'd like this to be a burst notify. And the burst notify will spawn particles at the location in the queue parameters. So we can set queue params.location. And we're inside the fireball. I'm just going to call get actor location. And we can pass in those queue params. Now, it looks like I made a typo here. This is Aura gameplay tags. It should be get dot gameplay queue fireblast. So typing a little too hastily there. But with that, we have our gameplay queue params. We've set the location on it, and we're executing gameplay queue non-replicated. With this, we can just compile and make our gameplay queue. Okay, so we're back. Now, the next thing to do is create a gameplay queue. So I'm going to go to the Ability System Gameplay Queue Notifies folder and create a new one. So we'll go to Blueprint, Gameplay Queue Notify GC Burst, and this will be called GC _ Fireblast. Let's open up GC Fireblast. Now, because I called it Fireblast, look at this. Gameplay queue tag, Gameplay queue Fireblast. How amazing. Now let's go to our burst effects and click plus for burst particles, and let's select one. Now remember, we have an explosion, and we have NS Fire Explosion and Fire Explosion 1. I'm going to use Fire Explosion. It's this one here. So that's going to do. And now for the burst sounds, we can add one of these. And we have an impact sound. It's called Firebolt Impact. And that's what this sounds like. That's the sound our firebolts have been making. So now that we have burst particles and we have burst sounds, we can go ahead and test out executing these gameplay cues locally. So we'll try on the server in a single player game. I'm going to press 2. There's our gameplay cue executing. Looks good. Looks like we leveled up too. Now I'm going to change the number of players to 2 and press play. Boom, we even knocked Aura away. Pretty exciting. So that worked on the client. We can even play as client with a dedicated server. And it doesn't matter which of these we use. And we get our cues. So we're executing gameplay cues locally. And this is great because this does not result in any RPCs, as gameplay cues by default are multicast RPCs. And that can be really expensive bandwidth-wise if we're doing this a lot. And this particular ability has 12 gameplay cues being executed, but they're executed locally. So no information is sent across the server. This is actually really useful. And we now know that the Gameplay Cue Manager has static functions to execute these to make things easy for us. So use these when you can. If something's already replicated, use local gameplay cues. If something is already predicted with a gameplay ability, use local gameplay cues. Only in the situation where you're not already replicating something and you need that effect replicated, do you want to use a replicated cue. In all other cases, where you can, execute them locally. All right, that's going to conclude this video. Excellent job. You now have another tool in your tool belt to make your games more optimal, more performant, and especially in multiplayer. Excellent job, and I'll see you soon.